She wasn't supposed to find the folder. Not yet. It was buried under old tax returns, labeled Archive 2014, right beneath the garage's broken wall clock and 2 Christmas wreaths we haven't used in years. She hated the garage, said it smelled like rust and spiders. That's why I picked it. But she found it anyway. And when she did, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She walked into the living room barefoot, holding it like a freshly dug bone. And then, without blinking, without sitting, without even asking why, she whispered, "I only married you because he left me first." No emotion. Like she was reading out a receipt. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Everyone thinks they're good at hiding history, but history lives in scratches. On furniture. In the way someone types a password. In what they erase from a mirror after a shower. She stood there, staring. The folder still in her hand. Pages trembling. She hadn't even seen the final envelope yet. She thought that folder was just surveillance. Just a betrayal turned into paperwork. She had no idea what it really was. She had no idea how deep I had gone. See, when someone tells you without telling you that you're a consolation prize, you don't just hurt. You document. You create timelines. You become an archivist of your own humiliation. Every deleted message. Every GPS ping. Every smirk she didn't think you saw. I was done playing the role of the oblivious husband 2 seasons behind on his own life. You think I didn't notice her shoes? They were never in the same place twice. I'd find one heel in the hallway, the other in the guest bathroom. I once found a pair in the trunk of my own car, wedged behind the emergency blanket. She said she was donating them. To who? A centipede? In the dreams. She started laughing in her sleep. That kind of short, breathy laugh that comes after someone tells you they've been thinking about you for years. I lay beside her pretending to snore while she murmured things like, "I never stopped missing you." Not to me. I knew his name. It was carved under the windowsill in her childhood home. That name, 5 letters, shallow cuts in old white paint, was the reason she flinched every time I said forever. And now she had the folder. Now she was shaking. Not because I caught her, but because she realized. I had been awake this whole time. She stood still for so long that I started to wonder if time itself had stalled. Her fingers hovered above the last page in the folder, and I watched how her knuckles whitened as she gripped it tighter, like she was trying to crush it with silence. The TV behind her was still playing some rerun comedy, laugh track echoing stupidly in the background, but she didn't move, didn't laugh, didn't breathe. I stayed seated. On purpose. The power of stillness is something you learn when you've been ignored for too long. When your jokes land flat. When your good mornings get returned 3 hours later. When the woman who once whispered, "You make me feel safe," now looks at you like you're the wall she leaned against until someone better showed up. She finally spoke again. Her voice was quieter than before, more hollow than defiant. "Where did you get this?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Let her ask again. Let her need the answer. She flipped through the folder again, slower now. Like maybe the story inside it would change if she read it gently enough. But it wouldn't. The contents were precise. Labeled. Numbered. Organized chronologically. I had printed out their text exchanges from the cloud, each message with timestamp metadata, screenshots showing her deleting them minutes later. Photos from the hardware store security cam, where she met him in the parking lot, the same lot where I taught her to parallel park years ago. Receipts from a cabin rental in Vermont under an alias that matched her high school nickname. Every detail was a stitch in the wound I'd been sewing shut, one thread at a time. "You shouldn't have seen this," she finally muttered. Still, I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just looked at her. Not with anger, but with something far worse. Full understanding. "I didn't show it to hurt you," I said. "I showed it because I needed to know if you'd lie when cornered. Turns out, you didn't even try." And then she said it again, slower this time, like it meant something deeper the second time around. "I only married you because he left me first." Like that was the explanation. Like that gave her permission to repaint our entire marriage as a waiting room. I stood up then. Not fast. Just enough to meet her eyes. "And now he wants you back," I said. That was the moment her bottom lip dropped slightly. A flicker of panic behind her eyes, almost imperceptible, but I caught it. She didn't know I knew that part. Yes, I knew he was back. I knew he had moved into an apartment 20 minutes from here. I knew he had recently gotten divorced, that he wore cologne she once claimed gave her migraines, and that she lied about having business lunches every Thursday, when really, she was taking the train to meet him at the art studio he rented just for sketching. She never cared for art. What she didn't know was that I had spoken to him. I hadn't planned it. It just happened. He came into the shop where I get my watch serviced. Same guy every time, same slow process, same quiet store. He walked in like he owned the world. I knew who he was the moment I saw him. I'd seen him in photos, old and recent. He hadn't aged well. There was something about him that screamed unfinished. Like a man who got what he wanted only to find out it still wasn't enough. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? To him, I was just a placeholder. I let him talk. He asked about Rolex bands, laughed about being back in town, and mentioned, casually, like you mentioned the weather, that he was seeing someone's wife. That was the moment I felt everything in me break and, oddly, settle at the same time. I didn't punch him, didn't yell, didn't threaten. I smiled, because I realized he didn't know she was about to destroy both of us. And neither did she. Not yet. She didn't speak for a long time after I mentioned him. You could almost hear her brain spinning behind her stare, like she was trying to calculate how many lies she could still fit between the cracks. Her mouth opened twice and shut again, each time with no sound. And that's when I saw it for the first time. She was afraid of me. Not in a violent way. She was afraid because I wasn't crumbling like she expected. I wasn't raising my voice or asking why. I was calm. And she knew people are only that calm when they've already made a decision. I sat back down, not because I was tired, but because it felt right to sit while watching someone's fantasy detonate. You met him? She finally said, voice raspy. I did. Her throat tightened. She blinked 3 times in a row, a nervous tick I'd forgotten about. Used to only happen when she lied to her parents. What did you tell him? Nothing, I said. Because I didn't need to. He did all the talking. That was technically true. I hadn't given him my name. I hadn't told him I was her husband. I just let him talk. And oh, he talked. He told me about how some people never move on, how women get stuck on the past, how they always come running back once they realize their mistake. He even said her name once, but with that stupid, smug smirk that made me want to rearrange his teeth. He thought he won, but what he didn't know was that he was already in my plan. Both of them were. And the folder? That was only step 1. See, I'm not a violent man. I'm not vengeful, but I am thorough. And when you spend years being emotionally benched by your own wife, you start to think of things differently. You don't want to explode. You want to document the slow-motion collapse. I'd been collecting her lies like a librarian, screenshotting messages from backup clouds, recording audio when she thought I was asleep. I had a full database of her coded phrases, the aliases she used for him when texting her best friend, even the airdrop name she changed on her phone when she was around him. Marley, in case you're wondering. A name she once told me she hated because it reminded her of a dog. But that was nothing compared to what I found on her laptop. I didn't go looking, to be fair. She left it open on the kitchen counter one day when I was home early. I almost walked right past it, until I saw a file that didn't fit. It was tucked inside a folder labeled Budget 2023, and it was named innocuously enough, Blue Moon Final. It was a document, 27 pages long. It was a letter to him. Or maybe a diary, I don't even know. But it started with, if I could do it over again, I never would have married him. The rest was like reading my own eulogy, written by the person who used to fall asleep holding my hand. She wrote about how she felt trapped, how she used our family as a shield from loneliness, how she tried to convince herself I was enough, but couldn't lie to herself anymore. She wrote about their plan, how once his divorce finalized and his ex moved to Phoenix, they'd pick a day to vanish. That phrase stuck with me. Pick a day to vanish. No goodbye, no closure. Just disappear. I wanted to confront her then, right then and there. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew I wasn't the man she thought I was. I wasn't going to disappear. They were. And the beauty of it? She was going to help me do it. She tried to sleep that night, and I let her pretend. She lay on her side, back turned to me, sheets drawn up to her chin like they could shield her from what I now knew. She didn't touch me, didn't say goodnight. Her breathing was uneven, sometimes shallow, sometimes shaky. It was the breathing of someone not resting, but performing the act of rest. I didn't move. I just listened. I thought about all the nights I used to trace circles on her back until she fell asleep. The little sigh she'd let out when I kissed her shoulder. That small smile that used to appear even in the dark. All gone now. Not because I changed, but because she was never really there to begin with. It's funny how you can live with someone for over a decade and still know absolutely nothing about them. I had memorized her coffee order, her shoe size, her most irrational fears, spiders, and being stuck in elevators. But I hadn't known about him. I hadn't known she was capable of writing out a literal exit strategy while watching movies with me on the couch. The next morning, I woke up before her. I showered, shaved, ate breakfast in silence. I packed a lunch and took out the trash like it was any other day. I didn't speak a single word to her. But before I left, I placed a single USB drive beside the sugar jar on the kitchen counter. No label, no note, just cold, black plastic. It took her 6 hours to call me. She didn't even try to sound casual. What is this? You opened it? Yes. Then you know. It was a backup of everything I had. The texts, the location logs, the recordings, her fake accounts, the letter to him. But it also had something else. A video file taken from a small camera I had set up in the den months ago. She always thought I was paranoid about the security system, but I wasn't watching for break-ins. I was watching for something breaking out. In the video, she's pacing in the den, phone to ear. She's agitated, using words I'd never heard her use in real life, harsh, confident, cruel. She tells him she thinks she can make the switch by summer. She jokes that I'm too emotionally fragile to put up a fight. She laughs when he says I probably won't even notice until it's over. Then she said something that made me physically nauseous. I'll leave him the lemon squeezer. That's all he ever uses. The lemon squeezer. She was mocking me, turning every small act of affection I ever gave her into some kind of cosmic punchline. That was the day I started locking the garage. Not because I was hiding anything dangerous, but because I was creating something she wouldn't understand. The folder? That was just part one. The USB? Part two. But in the garage, inside the cabinet she never noticed, I had something else. Something growing. A second identity. Bank accounts. Legal paperwork. Signed affidavits. Emails scheduled to be sent from burner servers. Video clips preloaded into timed Dropbox links. I had set a date, though I hadn't told myself what I'd do on it yet. I didn't know whether I wanted to disappear quietly, or let her watch me light her fantasy on fire. Then one evening, while she was in the shower, something happened I didn't plan for. She left her phone on the bed, unlocked, and a message popped up from a name she had stored as C. Cleaner. Obvious attempt at hiding him, but not from someone who knew her patterns. I picked up the phone. The message read, "Did you tell him yet? I'm getting tired of waiting, Maris." Tell me what? Wait for what? That was the night I opened a new document, titled only with one word, If. The file named If was empty for 4 days. I opened it every night, stared at the blank screen. Sometimes I'd type a sentence, then delete it. Sometimes I'd just sit there and imagine all the ways this could still go. I told myself I wasn't obsessed, that I just needed clarity. But the truth is, I wasn't writing a plan. I was writing my permission slip to walk away. I watched her more carefully now. Not like a jealous man. Not like a spy. More like a scientist watching a creature you thought you understood suddenly learn to lie. The way she adjusted her voice when she answered the phone. The longer showers. The silence between us that stopped being awkward and became comfortable for her. She had moved on emotionally, maybe years ago. The only thing left to move was her suitcase. And yet, she stayed. She made dinner like nothing had changed. Sometimes she even laughed at dumb things I said, like we were playing house. She would put on a movie we used to love and lay her head near my shoulder, not quite touching, but close enough to pretend we were still us. She was stalling. He was pressuring her. I could tell from the way her phone never left her hand. From the way she'd check the window every time a car drove by like she expected him to come crashing through the front door, demanding she follow through. But she hadn't told me yet. She couldn't. Because the truth was, I wasn't reacting how she expected. I wasn't begging. I wasn't accusing. I wasn't even leaving. And that scared her. I knew she wanted to be the victim when she left. She had rehearsed it in her head. Leland was cold. He never understood me. He shut down emotionally. I tried, but I couldn't keep pretending. That story doesn't work when the man across the table is still setting out your favorite tea every morning. So she stayed. And one evening, just after the sun dipped low and our living room turned that amber gold color it only gets in September, she tried to test me. She stood behind me while I was washing dishes and asked, "Do you ever think about what our lives would have been like if we never met?" It wasn't an innocent question. It was a probe, a breadcrumb, a test to see how awake I was. I dried my hands slowly and turned around. "All the time," I said. "But I think you already know that." She blinked, hesitated, then smiled too quickly. "I didn't mean." "I know what you meant," I said calmly. But the version I think about doesn't involve lemons or lies. So maybe it's better we did meet. At least now I know what not to look for next time. She froze for a moment, then walked away. That night, I added a second section to the if document. This one wasn't theoretical. It had dates, times, access codes, a list of what I would take, what I'd leave, and what I'd send to him. See, I had something else now. A leverage I hadn't planned on. 3 weeks earlier, I had printed out a copy of the cabin rental contract they used in Vermont, but I hadn't noticed something until that night. The signature at the bottom wasn't hers. It was his. Micah, yes, now I'll use his name, and signed for it using a fake name, Craig Linner. I ran it through a few databases. Turns out, Craig wasn't just a nickname. It was a pseudonym he'd used in 3 separate business filings that were now flagged under IRS review. And guess what? The address on the rental matched one of those filings. Meaning Maris, whether she knew it or not, had now appeared on a paper trail connected to possible fraud. And I had it in writing. I printed that out, put it in a new folder. Not black this time, or red. Labeled, if she goes first. I placed it in our bedroom closet, behind her old high school yearbooks. And that's when something happened that shifted everything. She came into the bedroom around midnight and stood in the doorway. Barefoot, hoodie on, hair down, no makeup. That version of her I used to love the most. Her voice was small. Can we talk? I looked up from my laptop, slow, cautious. What's on your mind? She stared at the carpet, then back at me. I think I made a mistake. My throat tightened. She wasn't confessing. She wasn't apologizing. She was testing the escape hatch. So I nodded. Just once. Then I said, you'll find what you're looking for in the closet. Middle shelf. Red folder. When you're ready. And for the first time, I saw her hesitate like someone realizing the fire exit leads to a much darker hallway. She waited 2 days before she opened it. I knew, because the folder had a paperclip at the top that I purposely bent. It was a trick I learned during a summer job at a law office, years ago. If the clip was disturbed even slightly, it would bend upward and click when removed. The next morning, it was crooked, and she avoided eye contact for the entire breakfast. I didn't push. I didn't ask. I just watched her pretend to be a version of herself that had already expired. She had read it, which meant she knew about Craig Linner, about the business filings, about the criminal angle, about how far this had gone beyond some steamy midlife reunion fantasy. And more importantly, she now knew I was done waiting for her to confess. When someone realizes you've stopped giving them chances, they don't apologize, they panic. And panic always reveals character. That evening, she made dinner. Chicken with rosemary and lemon. I almost laughed at the irony, but I just ate quietly, waiting to see if she would crack. Halfway through the meal, she finally said it. Leland, I know things have been weird between us. Weird. Like our marriage was just an awkward phase. She continued, I've been thinking about therapy. For both of us. Together. To, get back to where we were. That line was scripted. Probably rehearsed in front of a mirror. Maybe even typed out on her notes app for practice. But what caught my attention was what she didn't say. She didn't mention him. She didn't mention what she saw in the folder. She was trying to rewrite the script mid-play, pretend we were in a different scene altogether. I nodded. I think that's a good idea, I said. And just like that, I gave her a false sense of control. Later that night, while she slept, head buried in her pillow like someone trying to disappear, I finished the last stage of my plan. The one she'd never see coming. The one I titled, The Maris Protocol. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. First, I scheduled an appointment with a family lawyer I'd quietly retained 3 weeks earlier. Her name was Heather Lang. Sharp as glass, discreet as a whisper. She'd drafted the documents for me already. Divorce papers, asset protection waivers, and a full financial disclosure packet that Maris would need to sign if she wanted to avoid federal scrutiny. Then I withdrew half of our joint savings. The other half had already been moved months ago into a private account, one she couldn't touch because she never knew it existed. Next, I went to our storage unit. It was listed under my middle name, and she had never been there. Inside was everything I needed to vanish if she tried to play victim when this went public. Flash drives, photos, even a full written journal of what had happened since the day I heard her whisper that name in her sleep. I scanned the unit one last time, locked it, and mailed the key to my sister in Ohio with a letter marked hold. Only open if Maris contacts you. And finally, I called Micah. Yes, him. It wasn't a long call, just long enough to say one thing. Check your inbox. I've CC'd your former employer, your ex-wife, and the local small business commission. I hope you're ready to explain Craig Leonard. Then I hung up. I don't know what he did after that. I didn't care. He was never the real enemy. She was. Because Micah might have ruined our marriage, but Maris signed the paperwork. She's the one who smiled at me every night while mapping her exit. She's the one who used my gentleness as camouflage for betrayal. She's the one who picked the day to vanish and didn't realize I'd vanish first. The next morning, I left before she woke up. No note. No goodbye. Just the divorce packet on the kitchen table with a single lemon sitting on top. Later that afternoon, she called me 8 times. I answered on the 9th. Her voice was flat, no tears. So that's it. You're just gone. No, I said calmly. You are. And then I ended the call. Because for the first time in 11 years, I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't hear from her for 3 days. Not a call. Not a text. Not a single knock on the door of the condo I'd quietly rented under a different name. I half expected her to show up anyway, to storm into the lobby crying or apologizing or screaming about how I had overreacted. But nothing came. And somehow, that silence was more disturbing than if she had gone full soap opera. On the 4th day, I got a letter, handwritten, delivered by courier. She hadn't even signed it with her full name, just M. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity is cruel like that. It began with something that could almost be mistaken for sincerity. You've always been gentle. That's what first drew me to you. I thought it meant safety. But safety started to feel like stillness, and stillness turned into fear. I know I should have said something sooner. That sentence was a masterpiece of shifting blame without ever using the word sorry. She didn't deny anything. Didn't confirm anything either. Just floated there in the middle of implication. It was a letter written not for redemption, but for insurance. A soft record of her emotions in case this went public. In case I went nuclear. The second half of the letter asked if we could have one final dinner. She wrote, I think we owe it to each other to speak like humans. Not spies. Not ghosts. That line made me laugh. Not because it was clever, but because she still thought this was salvageable. That she could reach back through the wreckage and pluck something clean out of the ash. I didn't reply, but I did go. Not for her. For the ending I deserved. We met at a small Italian restaurant on the edge of town. Not the kind of place where you argue. The kind of place where people eat in quiet and pretend they're not watching you. She was already there when I arrived, hair curled, wearing a navy dress I'd bought for her on our 5th anniversary. The one she once said made her feel grown up. She smiled when I sat down. A nervous smile. The kind of smile you make when you're not sure if the ice beneath you is thin or invisible. You look good, she said. I am good, I replied. Her hands were folded on the table. She didn't reach for mine. Didn't touch her wine. I read everything, she said. The documents. The timelines. Even your journal. You broke into the storage unit? She blinked. So now I knew. I didn't react. Just stared. She hesitated, then whispered. I didn't know about the fraud stuff. I swear, Leland. I never saw any of that coming. Does it matter? I asked. She paused. I think it does. I wasn't trying to ruin your life. I leaned forward. No, you were just trying to leave it. She winced like the words hurt her physically. Then she started to cry. No sound, just tears and shallow breaths. I didn't comfort her. I watched. Because I knew now that her tears weren't for me. They were for the future she lost control of. I miss you, she said. Even now. Even sitting here. I looked down at my glass. Then back at her. I used to think you were my lighthouse, I said. But you were just a porch light. Warm enough to come home to, but only until something more exciting drove by. That broke her. She put her hands to her face. Shaking now. Her whole body folding inward like paper left in the rain. I waited. Not because I needed the power, but because this was her moment of truth. The one I had waited for longer than I'd admit out loud. And then she whispered something I didn't expect. He's gone. I frowned. Micah. She nodded. He left. The day after your call. Said it was all too messy. Said I wasn't worth this much drama. I let that sink in. She had torched everything, our home, our trust, our history, for a man who vanished the second things got inconvenient. And now she wanted comfort. Closure. Some kind of bomb for the wound she opened with her own hands. You know what hurts the most? I asked. She looked up, eyes red. That I almost stayed. Even after everything. I almost stayed because I thought maybe, just maybe, The woman I married was still inside you. But she's not. She tried to speak, but I stood before she could. I left cash on the table. Enough for both meals. Didn't touch my food. And as I walked past her, I said the final words I'd ever say to her in person. You weren't a mistake, Maris. You were a lesson. And I've learned enough. I didn't look back. Not once. But I knew she watched me go. It's been 6 months since that night at the restaurant. 6 months since I walked out without looking back, without slamming doors or saying anything cruel or theatrical. No grand revenge. No courtroom battles. Just a clean cut with everything sharp removed. She didn't try to follow me after that. There were a few emails. Some attempts to check in, to ask if I'd reconsider therapy, if we could talk about what the years meant. But I didn't answer. I didn't need to. There's nothing more dangerous than someone who finally finds peace. You can't bait them. You can't spin them in circles. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. My lawyer finalized the divorce within 6 weeks. Clean. Efficient. Thanks to everything I documented, there were no disputes, no fighting over assets. She signed the agreement quietly, even waived spousal support. I think she was too ashamed to ask for anything more. The house sold quickly. I bought a small place outside Asheville. Modest, quiet, surrounded by trees. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel lonely, it feels earned. I changed jobs, too. Left the corporate mess and took a position at a local nonprofit that helps at-risk teens learn business skills. It's not glamorous, but every day I feel like I'm building something honest. Something real. No more pretending. And as for love? I won't pretend I've jumped back into anything serious. But I have met someone. Her name's Elodie. Soft voice, sharp mind. She works at the community center I now volunteer at twice a week. We've had coffee, walked through used bookstores. She reads with her whole body, tilting the book like the pages are telling her secrets. I haven't told her much about my past yet. Not because I'm hiding it, but because I don't need it to define me anymore. For the first time in years, I'm sleeping through the night. No listening for footsteps down the hallway. No imagining whispered conversations in other rooms. No folder hidden in the closet, waiting to be opened. Just the wind through the trees. The hum of the heater. The soft turning of pages from the other side of the couch. And sometimes, when I slice lemons for tea, I still think of Maris. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just with distance. She was the end of a chapter one thought was alive. But she was only the middle. The real story started the moment I stopped trying to fix something she never wanted to keep. I'm not the man I was. I'm not afraid anymore. And that, more than anything she ever said, is the real ending.